I want to take another look at Nomar Mazara's two-homer game the other night. I'm a really big fan of his swing and what he's been doing lately in terms of production. Obviously, in the blog, we discuss a little bit about his increased performance against left-handed pitchers, which obviously tells us a bit about his approach and direction. Any of us left-handers know that it's a lot harder hitting guys on the same side as you, more specifically because you get a lot of the break working away from your barrel and you don't see it as often. So anytime you see a left-handed hitter doing well against left-handed pitching, there's something to be seen here. And obviously, as a bigger, more physical 6'4" guy, there's power projection in his body type. So it looks like he's tapping into a lot of that earlier this year, where the last couple years he's had 20 homers in each of the past seasons. So to be halfway to that mark is speaking something to what Nomar is doing this year. And there's one thing in particular I wanted to point out. Now, there's a lot of awesome stuff going on with his swing right now, but primarily the front side connection, the knee elbow. Obviously, we talk about working to really into the midline, so working against the backside. You can see through the rear leg. You can see that right hip kind of pointed almost a little bit off center, not quite in the direction of short side, but you can really see that he's in and against the rear leg into that rear hip with the knee and elbow at the center of his body. But as a left-handed hitter, and I can speak to this a little bit more personally here. And again, you can see him kind of ride out that rear hip a little bit as his hands go up and back. But one of the things that, as a left-handed hitter that I can relate to is this feeling of staying frontside closed. Now, we all know that hitters, efficient hitters, do not stay closed and push up against the front side. There's a big turn. So the terminology I like to call this the front side hinge. Okay, so if you look at the front hip, shoulder, as he begins his descent, one more frame back here, you can see that hip still kind of closed off as the foot's just about to be in contact with the ground. You can see he's got a little bit of, obviously he's created a good spine angle here, shoulder slightly tilted inward as the hands work up and back. But the front side hinge is really a byproduct of the connection between his lead elbow and the center of his chest, the front shoulder and the front hip. So as his lead hip begins to open due to the backside releasing, you can see the lead shoulder remain in place as he begins his initial move, and that rear elbow kind of pops through. And what he does is he almost works right up against and replaces the backside through the front side of his body. So you can see that lead arm directly across his chest, that elbow in line with the center of his body. And when I say hinge, I like to use the analogy of a doorway, an efficient doorway. So if this vertical line I'm drawing with my cursor here represents the side of the door, right, the barrel comes through as a byproduct of the backside closing. Right, so there's no energy loss, there's no direction loss. And why that's important is as a left-handed hitter facing a left-handed pitcher, we have to be able to begin to build that tension as we see through his torso here, while not compromising direction to the pull side. That's how we become susceptible to breaking balls, stuff working off the plate. So when you think about a really good front side hinge, it's almost like he's staying in place with the front side, and then, like I say to my hitters all the time, closes the door on the baseball efficiently. So his head remains in a nice position. You can see that good pelvic tilt. You can see his hips release into the baseball, and everything happens behind the front side of his body. And if you see in his spray charts and pitch selection, he's getting a high frequency of pitches in this location as well as this location from left-handed pitchers. So the ability for him, and he's swinging and driving a lot of balls, obviously elevated in the zone and down in that region as well. But the ability for him to lay off of that pitch, if you follow my cursor, the fastball, one or two taps off the plate, or the slider that looks like it's starting middle out and then falling to the outer part of the plate, that requires good front side hinging. It requires you to be in a good position to see the ball and then let the ball travel as deep as possible.